All right. Everything's working. Good morning. Hey. Good morning, Ponderers, one and all. Happy Thursday. It's 2020. And now it's 2/20/2020. Sounds like you got a stuttering problem when you say that. 2/20/2020. Yes, it is. Thursday, the 20th of February in the year 2020. And it's great to have you with us. This is the Pondering Podcast and Radio program where we ponder all things large and small, great and small. We talk about them. We encourage people to think things through. And we do so from an unabashedly, unashamedly, and unapologetically Christian perspective. We do this every weekday, 7:30 to 7:50-ish. Heavy in the ish a.m. And we are glad that you have joined us. Got a treat for you today. In just a minute or two, we will be joined on the phone by Pastor Al Stewart. Al has written a new book that I think you'll find encouraging and helpful, I think instructive for us as we seek to help families that have gone through the tragedy of suicide. It is something that not only affects the victim, but the people around them even more so, because for years to come, they often deal with the results, the tragedy. So Al is calling in now. We're going to get started with him, and this should be a good conversation. Hang on one second. Let's get him going here. Is this Dr. Al Stewart, the man, the legend? Whoops. Hold on. Al Stewart, are you there? Uh-oh. We lost him. Gonna have to have him call back in. There he is. How about that? Is this Al Stewart, the man, the legend, the way of life?
Hey.
I cut you off by accident there. I don't know what I did, but anyway, great to have you with us. How you doing, my brother?
Good. How are you, Joe?
Well, I am sitting upright and taking nourishment. Beyond that, I'm not sure, but it's all good. We're here. It's been one of those weeks where I just was moaning out in the kitchen, and Karen was sitting in the other room. I said, I can't do it all. I don't know why I try. That was my summary of the week, but that's okay.
Well, in our last pastors meeting, we have a meeting every week here in Virginia, and one guy was talking about his knee, the other guy his heart, and I finally looked around the room and said, guys, is this what we have to look forward to?
Oh, yeah.
It was like, I'm going to change this to the geriatric meeting.
That's right. One of the funniest pastors' meetings in my life was about 20 years ago. I was in a meeting in Meriden with a bunch of guys, and one of the guys who was the older of us and the oldest in the room starts telling us about his first colonoscopy. And this was funny for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is he was the most formal, straight-laced, kind of quiet guy in the group. Always wore a suit and tie everywhere. Always was very pensive, and he starts describing his trip to the doctor and the whole colonoscopy thing. And I mean, Al, we were on the floor. I had tears running down my face. I'm down on one knee on the floor, weeping, laughing so hard. Oh gosh. And it was priceless. I mean, there's nothing sacred in those meetings, as you know. It's a way to sometimes let off steam for us so we don't jump off a bridge or something. By the way, Susie says good morning, Al and PJ and Al, and great to have you aboard, Suze.
Awesome. And I think, I don't know if she'll get in there, but I'm hoping that Sharon may be listening to the podcast this morning as well. Wendy's mom is
nice.
Talk about the book, yeah.
Well, yes, and for all of you listening and those of you who may not be on Facebook Live, we are on Facebook Live. We're also podcast through multiple venues, and if you're listening via podcast and you want to contribute to the show, even after the fact, you can go to the Pondering Radio page of Facebook. Of course, you can live stream it there now if you're there, and you can comment live. But even afterwards, you can post on the page your comments, your thoughts. You can email us also at ponderingradio@gmail.com, or you can call us at 860-500-7163 and leave a message if we're not in, 860-500-7163. So Pastor Al, folks, for those of you that don't know him, is a longtime friend, longtime pastor, and author. He's also a musician. I mean, there's really nothing he can't do. I've not yet seen him walk on water, although he did part the water in his pool once when I was there. I think that was a cannonball he did that parted the water, but nonetheless, it was close enough. We'll give him credit. So, no, but Al has written a new book, and we're here today in part to talk about that. I've teased a little about it, Al, but tell us the title. Tell us what inspired you to write it.
Well, Joel, it's hard to believe, but it was only a few years ago that I think it was around 2016, 15, that you encouraged me to start writing, and this is through Boy, which is the publishing arm I set up. This is our 7th publication, the 7th book. It's the 6th that I've written.
Nice.
I've also helped. I also wrote a book for Chaplain Bob Boble called. He's a retired police officer and chaplain, called "Arrested by God." Put your hands up. Arrested by God. It's really a really good book. But this, I think of everything I've written, this is the pinnacle, because this is probably the greatest, or certainly the most impactful divine appointment I've ever had in my life. And as you know me, Joe, I've had many. I'm a guy who wants to have a divine appointment every day of my life, because it just takes us being intentional, walking out of the door in the morning and saying, okay, Lord, I'll go wherever you want me to go. We'll do whatever you want me to do. And I've had some pretty wild encounters, but this one here was the most powerful. And because it's such a, to the heart story, I mean, losing a daughter, I can't, and losing a child, I mean, that's, something I can't wrap my head around, and I'm sure you can't, and pretty much most everybody listening in can't. But after many years, I did talk with Sharon again and revisit it, and she did. When Bill passed, her husband, who really is in many ways the hero of the story, which I tell, she did agree. She said, I think we can do this. And I said, are you sure? Because I knew that this meant she was going to have to revisit the grief and the pain.
Yep.
And she said, yeah, let's do it. And we started around January of last year. So this book legitimately took a year to write. And the most touching part was about 4 months ago, when she was like, I can't do this. I think I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And I'm like, listen, it's okay. I never at any point tried to force her or pressure her. I said, it's okay.
Yeah.
We got a lot of material written. We'll just put it on the shelf. And Sharon, being the courageous woman she is, I love her to death. I admire her tremendously. Said, okay. A couple days later, I think I'm okay. And she dug back in, and the notes came back out. She started writing again, and so that's really how. And it was an emotional for me, because what I say in my introduction in the book is this: my life, as crazy as this sounds, my life was changed by a person I never met.
Right. Yeah, and I can relate to that at some level. By the way, good morning to Fred and Jim, who joined us also. So let's back up just a tad, Al. So folks at home, so when Al speaks of divine appointments, he's talking about where God leads you to someone in a way that's obviously miraculous, and it may be to share the gospel, it may be to just give comfort, it might be for whatever reason, but it's so cool because it was God. And tell us about that initial divine appointment with this family who'd lost a daughter to suicide.
Yeah, it was between 1995 and 2002. I had Oasis, as you remember, and I was using a parachurch part of Oasis to reach out to parents whose children had committed suicide. So it was kind of an after-the-fact ministry.
Yeah.
These were the people that I saw who were hurting the most. And I don't even know how it happened, but just all of a sudden I was in my basement on the computer, and there I was on Sharon's website for her daughter. Her daughter had taken her life in 1996, late 96, after right around Thanksgiving time. Very unexpectedly, they were totally taken off guard, as is usually the case. And I came across the site, and I mean, Sharon, as you read the book, I mean, we're already in 1 week, and I got to tell you, Joe, I've never had a book take off like this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this book, we've sold probably in the first 2 days, we probably sold about 30 copies.
Awesome.
And then, and in a week, we're probably approaching the 50 mark now. In 1 week for a self-publisher, and you can appreciate that, Joe. You know how unusual that is.
Yep, that is.
We have to do our own advertising. So I came across, the website, and I wept. I mean, I had not cried like that before. It just, the change in me was an emotional change. I was just heartbroken reading the story. So I did what any good Christian would do, and I fired off an email to Sharon, and I said all the right things. Where was Jesus? He was there. And then I got back, a little salty. Well, I got back a response that most Christians probably would have ran.
Right.
And she was angry. I mean, and rightly so.
Right.
She was angry. She was really upset. And I responded again. And in fact, she recently found some of those early emails. And it was kind of late to put them in the book. So if I ever do an addendum, it'll be those early emails between us.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good idea. Like an appendix. Yeah.
Yeah, an appendix, yeah. And so what happened was we started to talk. And evidently it was Bill, her husband, Wendy's stepdad, who was carrying a lot of the burden as well, because it was his gun case that was open. That's how she got the rifle, and
right.
That happened. So he was feeling some extra guilt about it. And
sure, yeah.
he was reading and he was the one that bought Sharon a computer, because he said, listen, I'm going to get her a computer so she could talk to other people and they could grieve together, which I thought was just was a very thoughtful thing to do.
Yeah.
And of course, Sharon, being the person she was, long before I contacted her, was already helping other people. So that tells you everything you need to know about Sharon. She was already out and about, because I would see her on a couple of these sites and helping other people. Just tremendous. In fact, when we met, she already knew somebody from Middlebury, Connecticut, a couple towns over from Waterbury, and a young lady whose son had died from suicide. She was helping them. In fact, ended up coming to Connecticut to visit them, and that's when I met her later on, after my visit to her. So Bill was reading my responses and started to say, hey, this guy's making sense. And God started moving on him. And then this went through the winter of '99.
Yeah.
It was like 3 years afterwards. She had taken her life in '96. And by the way, and I'm with Sharon on this, we don't use the word commit suicide, because commit sounds like a crime.
Right. Yeah.
It's very interesting, and something that Sharon taught me, and I thought, yeah, you're absolutely correct. And of course, we can talk about that later, because I get into suicide from a theological perspective. So this basically culminated in recognizing, they were like, hey, something is happening here to us. And so, no GPS in those days. I pull out a map, 1 mile. Guys, what time do you get home from work on Friday, Sharon? She goes, I'm home by 3 o'clock. I said, I'll be pulling in to your yard around 3.
Uh-huh.
And jumped in the car and went out there. Of course, both of them, prayed with me. Over that weekend, took them around. We found Pastor Walker at People's CMA Church, Good Christian Missionary Alliance Church. Met the pastor. I said, you need to take care of these folks, and I'll be checking on them. And he did. They were there for the first 4 or 5 years. And it was really, really incredible. But that first night, I would like to share this. Never had this happen before or since. I asked them. It was after we had visited around, found a place. Like, do you guys have a favorite place you like to eat? My treat. They go, yeah, Lou's Billow Beach, right on the banks of Lake Erie. Let's go. Best walleye I ever had. And so we go down there. We sit down, and a young lady, the waitress, comes over, writes something on a piece of paper. Now, has no idea who we are. We don't know who she is. Writes up on a piece of paper, and it's a little, like, tab, sets it on the center of the table, and says these exact words: I am here to serve you tonight, and my name is Wendy, and I'll be right back.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And she came back. Hankies are out.
Yeah, you're all crying. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
we're bawling our eyes out. She's like, did I say something wrong? I said, no, actually, you said something right. I was like, no, not at all, not at all. And I mean, that was just, I mean,
That's cool.
if I needed to know that God was in this,
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
there it was, and they knew it too. I mean,
Yeah.
and that kind of sums up what happened that week.
That's awesome.
It was absolutely amazing.
That's awesome. And we want to make sure we give people all the info here in a minute of where to get the book. Good morning to Jerry, by the way, and Eric. We're glad to have you guys aboard. We're talking to Al Stewart, pastor of Greater Grace Chapel in beautiful, sunny downtown Forest, Virginia. And he's also an author and a publisher, a drummer, which, of course, means he's brilliant and fantastic in every way, since he's a drummer. You know, that's how drummers roll.
Now,
He said,
people know,
I said with great humility, right? Yeah.
Yeah, hold on, folks. Don't be fooled. Pastor Joel is a drummer as well.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, that's beside the point. But yes, no, but thank you. No, so, but yeah, and Al has written another book, a new book, Wendy, Beauty from Ashes, right, as the title. And it's out now by Po' Boy Publishing, and we'll give you the info on how to get your copy. But listen, Al, I want to just say real quick, because you touched on it, and we're not going to have time to develop this very much, but we've talked before, and I think when you first had the idea for the book, we talked about this. I think we might have done it on the show, that a lot of Christians think that suicide is the unpardonable sin. In fact, I think historically the Catholic approach to suicide was not just a mortal sin; it was, pretty much unforgivable because you can't. It's too late. You're gone. And I have for years believed that because God is so wise and so omniscient, that if someone's distraught and depressed and not thinking clearly, perhaps drinking, perhaps using drugs, and I don't think that was the case with Wendy, but there are people that do that, and they, in a moment of weakness, take their life, that sin is no different than any other sin a Christian might commit. And God knows that, and He knows that, were they to wake up the next instant, they would repent. He's not going to hold that against them for eternity, in my view and understanding of the nature of God. And I think a lot of Christians struggle with that. Certainly a lot of families that have lost loved ones to suicide struggle with that. And I think unnecessarily so. I don't think God is a God who can't see through the mist, the maze, and the confusion of depression, etc. when someone does that.
That's very well put. The most, I would argue, that maybe the most important chapter in our book is chapter 12, Understanding Suicide. Along with chapter 7, Stigma and the Blame Game. That's another.
Yeah. All right. Right.
But just to go along the lines of what you're saying, for instance, with Wendy, she was date raped. She was taken advantage of.
Yeah.
One can only imagine what that does to a young lady.
Right.
And the value that they feel.
Right.
So you had that going on. And I like, this is kind of what I say in the book. I bring out two things. One is that, some people have, they have lung cancer, brain cancer,
right.
Breast cancer. Some people develop a mind cancer. That's the only way I can put it. And they just can't deal with the things that are happening around them.
Yeah.
And then, then we have the enemy who steals, kills, and destroys to come in to push someone, over that cliff. Another thing is this, is like, never, I think one of the most dangerous sayings in all of life is the acorn doesn't fall far from the tree.
Right.
Well, that's not true. That's one of those incredibly unbiblical statements, like God helps me when I couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
You know, and so what I do is I let's Adam. Cain killed Abel, so should we throw Adam under the bus? King Jehoshaphat, should we throw him under the bus for his children? Should we, probably one of the most righteous people of all of Scripture was the prophet Samuel, and the Bible says his sons did what was wicked.
Oh yeah, they were a mess. Well, and let's go back to the very beginning. I mean, who was the father of Adam and Eve? God himself. Is he a bad father because Adam and Eve ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and set us on this path?
Exactly.
You know, I mean, that's a dangerous theological pool to step in, isn't it? So, I think you're right on, man. You know, the other issue for me is we have to be in all cases. I mean, when people die, because I'm a hospice chaplain, I deal with it every day. The assumption evangelical Christians often have is, well, did they pray the prayer? And if we say, well, I don't think so, or I didn't hear it, well, then I guess that's it for them. They're going to hell. Well, God can communicate with people in their sleep. We know this. The Bible's full of examples of dreams where people hear from God. How do we know that in the last moments of someone's life there wasn't a spiritual conversation that led to a faith decision? I don't make those judgments. Thankfully, I'm not on the throne of heaven. God is. And I at times have tried to sit next to him. He just pushes me off. It doesn't fit. There's not room for two of us on the throne, thank God. So I think that applies, obviously, in suicide. Hey, look, we're about out of time here. Tell us how people can get it and where they can chime into the conversation if they want on this subject.
Basically, the book is available on the main site is Amazon, Amazon.com, Amazon worldwide. If you go in and type in Wendy, Beauty from Ashes, or if you type in Rev Al Stewart, REV. Al Stewart, all my books should come up, all 7 of them. But basically, the easiest way is to go to Amazon.com. I'm also pleased to say that you can go to BMIbook.com. BMI, like Barry, Mike, and Isaac. It's also there. But Amazon is probably the best and easiest place because the BMI is just going to take you to Amazon.
Yeah.
But it's just another place where you can find it. And let me also say this, Joe. If you get the book, it's available in paperback, ebook, and Kindle. Please, I cannot stress this enough, please leave a review of the book because that's a lot of people judge, the books and stuff by the reviews.
That's
and
right.
That is, we've already, in 1 week, we've already got 3 to 5 reviews up there already.
Nice.
Tremendous.
And don't just type Al Stewart because, no, he did not sing The Year of the Cat. I just want to put that out there. It's got to be Rev Al Stewart, and you got to search for Wendy, Beauty from Ashes to get the specific book title and get the book up there. Highly recommend it. Wrote a little endorsement for it and meant every word. So I can't say enough. Al's books are just, they're worth 3 times what they will cost you to get them by Amazon or via Amazon. So, hey, Al, love you, man. Thank you so much for being on the show and for all that you do. Give your lovely bride a hug for me. And, hey, let's do this again sooner rather than later, okay?
Absolutely, Joe. Always good to have you out there, and I'm thankful for the Pondering podcast, just for your ministry and, most of all, for your friendship. So thank you, bro. I appreciate that. Lord bless you.
Lord bless you, too.
All those listening in. Thank you, Joe.
All right. See you later, bud. So that was Reverend Pastor Al Stewart, and his talking about his new book, Wendy, Beauty from Ashes, a beautiful example of pastoral care in the wake of suicide, and some great lessons on that subject, and also tips on how to help people. And I think really everybody ought to read it because we all know someone who was touched that way. We've either had it in our own family or through our church family or through friends. We know people who've suffered that loss, and it's a tragic thing too that Satan will latch onto that and just torment people for years if often there's not an intervention by people in prayer and helping them. Because I counseled a woman years ago who had found her brother after he hung himself, and she every year on the anniversary of his death she would have this overwhelming urge to go hang herself, that she had to do the same thing. And she literally would walk into every building looking for rafters to see if there was a place she could do it. And I used to say, well, that's just sick. Well, it is, but you know where that comes from. From the deceiver, the Satan, the dragon, the serpent, and we had to pray through that with her. But anyway, good book. Check it out. Think it'll help you be more effective in helping those suffering in that way. So we're out of time. God bless you guys. Hey, we'll be back tomorrow morning, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Pass the word, spread the word. And we'll do a little free-for-all Friday tomorrow. Get some free-flowing ideas, thoughts, whatever. So be thinking about topics, questions, etc. you'd like to throw out there. And we will take some time to do that tomorrow morning. In the meantime, as I always say, stay in the Word, keep praying, and do not check your brain at the door. Keep on pondering. And we will see you mañana. Bye for now.